Welcome to ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast hosted by Victory Lyric. Get ready to be inspired to be all you were called and created to be. Join us as we showcase nationwide artisans and their unique stories. This is your opportunity to explore creativity with diverse crafts, recipes, and tutorials with practical tips for unleashing your artistic side. Let's get ready for spiritual upliftment, healing stories, miracles, and divine goodness. Get ready for an amazing segment of ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast with host Victory Lyric.
Welcome to ArieVive Studios. You guys, we are so glad that you're here today with us. I am your host, Victory Lyric, and I have an amazing guest with me today, Matthew Harris.
Hey,
so, Matthew, welcome.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, we have a next segment, and I would love to kind of go through that. Our next segment is Artisan Point of View.
Yeah.
So you kind of talk about the ways to go about writing a song. Why don't you kind of fill us in?
For sure. So we've been talking a lot about songwriting, and songwriting, again, one of my favorite things, and it's so individual. So like when it comes to writing a song, everybody's process is at least a little bit different. And so when it comes to helping people write a song, that can be a difficult thing, because really once you start to do it a lot, you kind of get your own little mannerisms. And really, I believe God has designed us all with specific giftings, and that's even every songwriter God made different. And so I should learn from every single person I write with. But it does help to have a little bit of a teaching to get people started. Just like my dad kind of was like, hey, just really what he did, he said, tell me what God's putting on your heart and then just write it down. And so those are actually the first two steps of this kind of songwriting teaching that we do for maybe writers that are a little less inexperienced. And it's also a great tool to go back to whenever you get writer's block, because sometimes you get there and you're like, well, then what do I do? And so we have a little bit of a system that we kind of go through. And the first step of that, it's 4 steps. And the first step of that is listen to know. And this is kind of specific somewhat to worship music or church or music for the Lord. But honestly, I think if you want to be the best version of yourself as a creative, partnering with, like I said, the creator is a great way to do it. And so the first step is listening to know. And so listening to know really just means like, Lord, what do you want us to sing about? Or it's like, God, what are you doing in my community? Like listening to know is being aware of what the Lord's doing, what he's speaking, and starting from that place. I was writing with somebody one time, and she told me a story of a friend of hers that died and went to heaven, and he was declared dead, and he was a songwriter. And they ended up reviving him. He came back to life, and he said he, for 1 second, was out of body. And he said, I'm pretty sure, he's like, I was in heaven. Like, that's what it felt like. It felt like anything, it's so much greater than anything else I've ever experienced. So, and he was there, and he said he heard a song he had written. He was like, what is that? And she said, he was like, what is that? And somebody in heaven said, like, because he asked, he's like, is that my song? And he's the person in heaven said, no, that's just one we let you hear. And it's like, yeah, that's the coolest thing ever. And so like,
that makes me want to cry too.
I mean, it's just wild. Like, you're like, whoa. Like, and so really like, whoa, one of the lights just turned off.
Oh, it seemed a little like, majestic there for a moment.
Now. All the worship vibes. But basically that's where we want to start. I want to ask God what's on his heart, because if I can partner with what's going on in heaven, that's what I want to do. And so we start by listening to know. And so after we listen to know, the next thing we want to do is write to flow. And so they're all going to rhyme, because this is a songwriting teaching. And so you listen to know, and then you write to flow. And all that means is just write. Don't stop yourself. Like, sometimes, no, not sometimes, the most intimidating thing is a blank page. Like,
Mhm.
so really when I listen to the Lord and I'm like, hey, what have you given me? And so, example, a lot of times I use when we're doing this teaching is the word joy. If I feel like the Lord's like, hey, I want, like, let me put that on your heart, like joy, like be filled with it. And the next thing I'll do is I'll go to scripture and I'll read every scripture I can find on joy. And then I'll think about the times that the Lord showed up in my life and brought me joy in the midst of pain or something like that. And so we'll write, like, I'll find all that, have it all in my heart, and then I just write. Like, don't,
Right. No
yeah,
arranging, no organizing, just go.
no.
Pour
And
it out.
the more you write to flow, the more
Uh-huh.
you end up naturally putting it in those places. But it's a lot like what my dad asked me to do. He said, just write, and then we'll get to the next piece. And
Okay.
so really that takes courage. Like
Well,
it takes courage to look at a blank page and go, I'm just gonna go for it. And I,
pressure off too, though, because if you're just writing to, get it out,
yeah,
then you're also not putting pressure on yourself to know how it works.
exactly. Yeah. And you get to find the song a little bit. I think that's what's fun is excuse me, you're kind of just waiting to see where the song is supposed to go. I think it's the most fun thing to look at a song after you finished it and go, that didn't exist before this. Like,
Right?
how fun. And so writing the flow, you just kind of get it all out there. And um, I was in a co-write at one point, and someone told me, I kept saying, I don't know if this will be any good, but, or this probably isn't it, but,
Oh,
and the person, oh, sorry, George trying.
okay.
The light came
Oh,
on.
there's the light.
There's the light. um, the person told me, he said, all right, I'm going to draw a line at the bottom of this Google Doc, because we were writing on a Google Doc. And he said, that's the dare to suck line. And I went, what?
I love
He was like, I'm tired of hearing you say this might be bad.
it.
Just dare to suck. And he's like, and usually I'm doing this teaching with kids. So I say it's the no judgy line. But
Mhm.
he said it's the dare to suck line. And I was like, he goes, just dare for it to be awful. Like, what if the thing that's most
Got
awful
me
in your
popping.
yeah, sorry, it's contagious. Um, but basically he said, like, just dare to do it. And so that's where, like, especially in co-writing spaces, it's even a little more intimidating sometimes to write to flow, because you feel like everyone is listening to what you're saying to see if it should be in the song. And so
Sure.
dare to just go for it. And so
Mhm.
you listen to know, you write to flow, and then the most important part outside of hearing the voice of God is um editing slow. So, like, one thing we like to say is a song's not done when you can't think of anything else that could go in it. A song's done when you've looked at it and said, I can't take away anything else. Because
Right.
I think it's like the most powerful messages you hear are usually to the point. They take
Mhm.
massive truths, massive concepts, and boil it down to something that's bite-sized so you can go, "Ah, nice."
Mhm.
That's what we're doing with truth and song too. The more simple you can make it, not there's complexities in truth, and you can dive into all of them. But if you can take it away to where 3 words is a whole lot easier to remember than 15. So if
I
you
love
can
it.
get the 15 words in 3, do it. Like,
Mhm.
and there's poetic, like, you can be, I mean, look at haikus, like any kind of poetry that has a system to it. What it does is it forces your creativity to grow. And
Mhm.
so in the editing process, really every line, going through rhyme schemes, going through cadence, um, the whole gambit, taking that time to edit slow is so important. And so you have listening to know, writing to flow, editing slow, and then the very last one is tie it in a bow and let it go. And so, basically, why we say that is, once the Lord's finished the song, trust Him with it. Like, so many times, I think people write songs and go like, "Well, what now?" And it's like, "Well, it's a gift He gave you. Give it back to Him." Every
Yeah.
song is a gift. So if I steward it well, I take it and I write it the best that I can. And
Mhm.
then I believe, Lord, if this song was for me, if this was a prayer for me, that's a win. But if it's supposed to go to the whole world, whatever you want to do with it, God, it's yours. And um, Pastor Rita Springer. She's a worship leader, and she's amazing.
One of my favorites.
She's awesome, and one of my an amazing person. And Rita, one time we were at a writing event, and
you get to write with Rita.
Oh yes, and
jelly much.
I've gotten to. That's what, like, I've gotten to. It is. You said it right. I get to. Like, she's amazing, just in every way. And so we were at a writing event, and she really said one of the coolest things. She asked the Lord. There was a bunch of writers in a room, and she was leading worship, and she kind of stopped, and she was like, I asked the Lord the other day how he views songs. And I'm like, why have I not asked him that? Like, come on, like, it should be the first thing I did. And she's like, I just asked him. And she said a lot of times we can view songs like grenades, and we can measure their success on like how many people did it reach and God said, that's great. I love that. There's nothing wrong with that. Songs reaching a lot of people is awesome. He said, but I view them a little more like arrows. There's an intended target for every song I've given you. And if it hits the target, that's the win for me. And I love that she said that, because it pulls the prophetic into songwriting. And that's why we listen and say, like, Lord, what is this? But that's also why we trust that wherever it needs to go, he'll make a way for it to go there. And there's good stewardship on our part when it comes to publishing and all these different things. But my favorite song maybe my favorite song I've ever written, only 5 people have ever heard it. And more people have heard it. It's meant, I think, for 5 people, but one person, the Lord said it's for her. And sure enough, it was miraculous. That's the only way to say it, like how it was written and all the different things. But knowing, the Lord's win for this is not that our whole church sings it. That's great if that happens. It was her. So I sat in a room.
99, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I believe it's like anything, how you steward something sometimes determines how much more he'll give you. And so if he looks and goes, hey, that's someone who will steward the word I give him, and his wins are my wins, then he continues to breathe on what you're doing and giving you more things. And so we tie it in a bow and let it go and let God do what he wants with this song, and then go write more songs. I think a lot of times people write their favorite song and don't write their next favorite song because they're so obsessed with the one they just wrote. And which is be a fan of your song. Like be a fan of your song. You created something. Now write another one. Like,
right?
You have so much more. It's like, I've seen that little meme or something of the girl who I think like her dad is like asking for her teddy bear, her small teddy bear, and behind him he has.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that
one?
Giant one. And I think sometimes we hold on to these little things that we see as gifts from God because they are, and we go like, well, I can't let it go now. And God's like, do you know I was preparing your heart with that gift to blow your mind with what's next? But I need you to lay that down so you can hold it. And I think songs are a lot like that at times.
Because God says to me all the time, you got to empty your hands. So empty them to be able to receive.
I love that. Yes, that's so good. Yes, 100%. And so we tie it in a bow and let it go. So we listen to know, write to flow, edit slow, and then we tie it in a bow and let it go. And so
awesome. I love that, Matthew. Thank you for that. That's so great. Well, okay, we're to our last segment, which is my very favorite segment.
Mine too.
It is our victory point of view.
Yes.
So you have quite a story to tell us, don't you, Matthew? And victory. I did not read your story. I did not read it ahead of time because I want you to tell it to me.
Oh, perfect. Well, Victory, I have a story you will not believe.
All right, try me.
All right. So, and if I tear up in all this, I'm so thankful.
Okay, it'll be like the 5th time on the show. So
yeah, we'll just tear up the whole time. It's perfect. It's kind of the mood. Joyful tears. So about 2 years ago, me and my family were on a trip, and we were down in Florida, and it was my dad, my mom, my wife, my son, and we were pregnant with my daughter. And so my wife was pregnant with Holly, And we had gotten down to the beach, and we were staying in this this condo that had 2 stories on it. And about 3 in the morning, actually, it was at 3:07 in the morning. 3:07 in the morning, um, I woke up, and usually when I wake up, usually if it's in the middle of the night, it's 'cause I gotta go to the bathroom or I need a drink of water. It's like that's usually the only 2 reasons I'll wake up, or kids crying now.
Right.
But it's real. But all of a sudden I was like, I heard this noise, and I was like, I thought someone was power washing the side of the house, and it looked like it was daylight. And I was confused because I was supposed to go put out the beach chairs actually. And so I was like, did they let me sleep in? And I was like, my parents did me a solid, took Jude, our son, and let us sleep. I was like, that was so kind. Why are they now pressure washing the side of the building, the house? Like, it's hard to sleep through that. And so I was like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. And before I did, I was like, I just need to go look outside, and turned around and opened the blinds, and everything was on fire. So the entire like the wall of the house that I opened was on fire. And so I screamed to Jessie, my wife, who was asleep, and said, "Wake up, the house is on fire." And she grabbed my son, ran out. I ran into the middle of the house, and my parents were upstairs, and I just screamed for them to wake up. I said, just, and once I heard them stirring, I ran back in our room to make sure Jessie was out, and grabbed I grabbed just my backpack that was sitting right there. And by that time, the flames had come through the window. So from the time that I woke up, looked out the window, ran into the middle of the house and ran back, which had to be seconds, the fire had come through the window, and it would have been on Jessie at that point. So she
Whoa.
would have been on fire. And so I run back outside of the house, and there's a billion little details and all that, but the fire department ends up coming. It set both of our cars on fire that we drove down. The whole house then
Whoa.
collapsed 7 minutes after I woke up. So we have we have we have we have the call I made to 911, and we did like all the way, and then when it collapsed, and it was like, I think 4 minutes after I called 911, which was probably about 7 minutes after I woken up, is I think what we were figuring out. And what was wild is the fire came up the side of the building, and it had a tin roof on it. And so it came up this side, went into the attic and down the other side. So it never set off a smoke alarm. And the fire couldn't escape through the ceiling. And so the house literally was burning from the outside, waiting to crumble on itself with us in it, with us having no way of knowing that it was on fire. And so I talked with a fire chief. I mean, we talked to a bunch of fire chief, like it was wild. And one of them said, I don't know if you believe in God or anything, but this is impossible.
Totally
like,
not.
yeah. No. I'm like, I'm a pastor. Like actually. And so, but he was like, this isn't the deadliest time for a fire is between 3 and 5, I think is what they said. Or it might've been 2 and 4, somewhere in there, because you're in one of the deepest cycles of your sleep, and no one else is out on the streets to let you know if it's on fire. But then a double parlor fire is what they called it, is the most dangerous kind of fire. So it was the most dangerous kind of house fire at the most dangerous time. And we only woke up 7 minutes before it crumbled. And there was the Lord. Like, I don't wake up either. Like my wife would tell you, she'd be like, no, like kids are screaming on a monitor and it's right next to my head.
Yeah.
How do you not hear this? She's like, do you actually not hear this? Like, I'm like, no, I promise
I know.
sleep. But so the Lord woke me up and really got us out of the house. And so it was miraculous. And
that is miraculous in that short time.
Oh yeah. And it was, I think after that, my dad also had found out the morning of the fire, he had COVID. So like he had it at the worst you could possibly, like it was the worst day he had it too. So like we were out there and he couldn't even hold my son. He didn't know why. He was just weak. Like he could hardly move. And so There's a ton of other details of all the things God did in the midst of it, but I think the most
Wow.
important part is 2 days went by and you're kind of just in shock. We had nothing. We lost every ID, all of our wallets, both of our cars, had no way of getting back home. And so we were just kind of like walking. It was bad. And about the third day in, I was at the beach though, so that was kind of nice. So I went out and I was like, I just need to get with the Lord. Texted a couple of my closest friends and we're just like, I need y'all's prayers. It was a low moment, like just really low. And honestly, I felt a little guilty that I got out. Like it was a weird feeling because I was talking to the Lord and I was like, you don't like, I don't understand all of his ways, but he saved my life when I was born again, when I was 18 years old in a college dorm room. And I'll tear up, but that's more than I could ever ask for. I'm so in awe of that. And for him to wake me up and pull me out of that building, I'm sitting there looking at the water and I'm just bawling my eyes out. Like, why would you do that for me? Like, I know me, like, I know who I am. Why for me what do you want me to do? That's what I said. I was like, well, what do you want me to do now? And he said, I don't save people for them to do things. I save them because I love them.
Yep.
I was like, boo-hooing again. And then the thought that hit me next was, this isn't my life. I think so many times, like, we see these movies that are like, what is it, Princess Bride, where he saves somebody's life, and then it's like, I owe you my life. I think.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, it's like, I owe you my life now, and like, that's the transactional piece of saving someone's life, is now you owe it to them. Well, that's what we say for Jesus gave his life for me, and now I give my life to him. This life is his. And just like when I got saved, my stance was, it's all yours then. And in that moment, he actually pulled me out of a burning building. And I'm like, that feels very, very real. Sometimes you give, like in salvation, we are giving our lives to the Lord, but sometimes it can feel like, okay, it's yours. And now I got to figure out what that means. When he just like rips you out of a burning building, you're like, I wouldn't be here if you didn't do that. Like, it gets very real. And all I could feel was like, my life's not mine. And that's the way he intended it. And it was just a really cool moment. And really, it was like just a shot of boldness and courage, knowing like, hey, my life is in his hands. Like, if there's turbulence on the plane, like the small things, like my life's in his hands. And it kind of, the night after the fire, my wife and I were going to sleep, and it's a weird feeling when the last time you did that, the house.
Yeah, there was the terror.
Yeah, exactly. And so my wife looked at me and just said, like, are you a little worried? Like, and I was like, if he pulled me out last night, why would he pull me out to let me die another night? Like, and so, like, it kind of just like hit me. And I think that's the way I want to live my life. It's not mine. It's his. He's in control of it. He knows my first breath. He knows my last. And I hope he has every single one of them in between. And, I think that's why, like, it's so amazing what God did, but the way it changed my heart, like I was his either way, but now it's just a beautiful reminder for me all the time that my life's not mine. And walking with him and understanding that I can live in true peace. Like, I have peace. I have courage. Like, I'm not worried because I'm his. Like, I already lost my life. Like, I'm like, all right, it's gone. Like, it's his. And I feel like most things with the Lord, it's simple. That doesn't make it easy, but it is simple. Everything I am is his. And that's it.
I love that. And I love that that's what came from that moment for you, just like a whoa. And also that confidence, like when he shows up in ways like that, the confidence in, just being able to live today more so without fear, without worry, just feel like, my daddy's got me, like
exactly. Yes, it is. I
I mean, like your little kids right now. You have little kids right now.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I was very confident, like my dad's got me. I never had
Yep.
to worry
For
about anything.
sure. Yep.
In fact, he's the reason that I believe I can do literally anything because he
I
told
love
me I
it.
could,
Yeah,
you know.
100%.
But your little kids, they're dependent on you
Mhm.
in a certain special way. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not worried about crossing the street. My daddy's got me. They're not thinking. They're just
Yeah.
going.
100%. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I that's the beauty of that relationship is like, oh, my father has me. Like, and I trust him completely. There was there's this story, and I don't know if this is made up or true, but I want to say it's true, so we'll go with it. This pastor that would hop on a plane when he was going to speak somewhere, and he would let the people know as he walked by, he's like, hey, don't worry. Doesn't matter how bad it gets, we're gonna make it there. God already gave me a word. And so he's like, you could be in the belly of a well. If God gave you a word, you're gonna get to where you're going. Like
Right.
because he's giving you something. And I was flying 2 nights ago, and I was on a plane with a couple of the people I work with, and one of them does not like turbulence. And I was like, hey, I feel like God already has something for me next week that I need to go do. So I'm pretty confident we'll make, like, it's like, but I thought that's just true. Like
Yes.
that's the courage I want is enough faith to go, if you said it, you'll do it.
Mhm.
And if you need me to do it, then you'll make sure I'm there. Like,
That's
and so
amazing.
it's just
I
fun.
love it. I
Life
love
with the
it.
Lord's the best.
Aw. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for being here today. And I
Oh,
feel
thank
like
you.
I hate that this interview is ending because it's just so good and I could go all day talking to you
Keep
about
talking. Yeah.
these things. Right?
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Victory. Seriously.
Yes, I
It's been a
love
blast.
it. And so for our viewer audience, how do they find you or your music that you guys are producing? Where would they
Yeah.
look to hear what you're working on?
So any of the music that we're producing right now is with Gateway Worship, and so we're on every one of the things: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, LimeWire. Do we still use that? No, yeah, yeah,
Love
all the things. I don't know. On all the things you can do, just so Gateway Music for all that, and then yeah, and then here at Gateway Church, and probably if you in the Metroplex and you don't have a church home, I would welcome you like to come by to get involved in your local church. Like it's the most important thing ever. And so yeah.
Oh, well, wonderful. So thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you.
And God bless you. And we'll see you again next week.
Thanks for tuning in to the ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast hosted by Victory Lyric. It's our goal to inspire you to be all you were called and created to be. Join us next week as we showcase nationwide artisans and their unique stories. It's your opportunity to explore creativity with diverse crafts, recipes, and tutorials with practical tips for unleashing your artistic side. So until next week, God bless from your friends at the ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast and your host, Victory Lyric.